Lee Lumpkin will have our invocation. Lee?
Let us pray. Our Father, thank you for this amazing day. Thank you for the great resilience of our people in our state, in our city, here in our Rotary. Thank you for the strength of their faith. For the great gift of life, we thank you. Please help us find its joy in each and every day. In thy name we pray. Amen.
You may be seated. Ellen Hayden is going to come and welcome our visiting Rotarians and guests. Ellen?
Good afternoon. I'll bring it. Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Good. We have no fellow Rotarians visiting with us today, but we do have Rotarians of our own who have guests, about 5. So if you would please stand, and John Durst, as I understand it, is going to walk around with a microphone.
I'm very bright. Today I have my gift is my wife, Pat.
Yes, sir.
Can you get everybody's attention, please?
Hello, I'm Lee Lumpkin, and I have 2 wonderful guests, Pat Lauder and Julie Lumpkin. Pat Lauder is the famed office manager of Columbia Classical Ballet. She's also serves on the board of Children's Trust, and you will see her everywhere helping others. My dear friend Pat Lauder. My dear friend and cousin Julie Lumpkin, who has just opened her own business as consultant, grant writer, project manager. If you need somebody wonderful, she's your woman. Thank you, cousin. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rita Harris, and my guest today is Linda Clary Umberger from Farley for America campaign. If you're looking for a Republican woman to vote for in the primary, Farley's your person.
Anyone else with a guest? We welcome you here with us today. One more.
One more. I'm Adam Jordan. My guest today is Tracy Wright. She is the wife of Brett Wright, who's joining us today.
Tracy. All right, you all indulge me one more time, because it's so much fun to be disrespected. Turn today to the person directly on your left and say in this tone of voice, this intonation, it is so good to see you.
Okay, I know how much y'all love to do that. We're going to have more fun with Terrence Garrett, Health and Happiness. Terrence?
Good afternoon. Let's try that again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, now it sounds like some exciting Rotarians. Today I'm going to start off. Wow. I'm sorry. I'm a military man. I need a microphone. First of all, I'm going to start off today with happiness. First, happiness for all. Mr. Bob Crutchfield's beautiful daughter was crowned Miss Georgia Tech. Granddaughter. I'm sorry. Granddaughter was crowned Miss Georgia Tech this past weekend, and she also has attained a 3.0 grade point average, and also a chemical engineer. Bob? Major. Just say yes. Give him a round of applause. Also, some good news is that Miss Catherine Davis, a fellow Rotarian, has 10 pounds of pepper that she's willing to share to all of us Rotarians. She has it out in her car. She has jalapenos, she has Scotch bonnets, and she has some Carolina Reefer. I mean, and they were freshly picked this past Saturday, so please partake in it after the Rotarian meeting. I stated today I was going to start off with happiness. I'm not going to actually tell any jokes today. I'm going to be pretty much serious today because I wanted to give you something that you can take away from today's meeting and feel good about yourselves. I found out that the best way to honor anybody is to tell the truth, is to be truthful and be direct and have a sense of integrity when you talk about individuals. But one particular story I must share with you, and which actually happened this past Sunday. My grandfather had the opportunity to go to church, and the pastor was really shocked to see him as we were exiting the church in the lobby. And the pastor said, "Mr. John, I haven't seen you in a while. You know, you really need to join the army of the Lord." He said, "I am in the army of the Lord." He said, "Well, I only see you doing Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter." He said, "Well, I'm in the Secret Service." T.E. Lawrence once stated that all men dream, but not equally, but those that dream at night in the dark recesses of their mind to awaken to just vanity. But those that dream in the daylight are the most dangerous ones to ensure that their dreams become true. Our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond all means. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, to be smart, to be talented, to be fabulous? But who am I not to be when I am in fact a child of God? Nelson Mandela. This week, or today, I want to recognize you Rotarians for your efforts during the flood relief. Because you all have displayed that you have the resiliency, but also the compassion to help the fellow man. This great state is on the national conscience of all the things how we came together as one. And it's tremendous. Not only just what you have done, but what you've done for your fellow neighbors. And I just wanted to have you recognize yourselves for the great things you have done. Your participation in the phone-thon. I think we raised almost, $70,000 by phone. And then just looking at the display here where we raised up to about $3,500. That's a testament to itself. That you, by far, are great. And I stated early beyond, every time I had the opportunity to speak, that to be great is not about the degrees that you have attained. It's not about the conversations that you have with distinguished people, but to be great is when you're willing to serve others. You all have met that test. So if you be so kind, please give yourselves a shameless round of applause. So I encourage you all tonight, I encourage you each and every night to place your shoes way under your bed. So in the morning, you have to get on your knees to follow and to find them. And while you're down there, continue to give thanks and mercy to the things that made all the things that you do possible for others. And then on that note, in tradition, I love you all, and guess what? Nothing you can do about it. You can't do nothing about it but love me back.
Thank you, Terrence. I had to remind myself to turn off my cell phone. I forgot about that, so if any of you guys want to check your cell phones out there, that'd be great. Just something I need to announce, Terrence?
Just that, my twin.
Yeah, I was fixing to say you didn't mention Rusty at all in your presentation, so now I get to mention. There are two spooky opportunities to celebrate Halloween at South Carolina Confederate Relic Room and Military Museum this year. On Friday, the 30th, learn about the last duel fought in the state as Rusty DePass speaks during the October edition of the museum's Lunch and Learn series. And I bet you if you want to have a duel with Rusty, he'll probably do it as well. Anyway. All right, so Terrence mentioned the Flood Relief Fund. we've been receiving some donations from outside the club, other clubs around the country, but we are up at $3,075. If any of you want to give, you can go online and GoFundMe. It's on the website, and you get it in the email. If any of you have had damage from the storm, I'd ask you to let Carrie or one of the board members know. Board members will be meeting to distribute that money among ourselves. It's not something that's going to make everybody whole, but it's going to help out a little bit. And now I want to recognize John Durst for just a second to make a banner presentation.
Thank you, President Al. One of my best friends lives in Atlanta. He's a Rotarian there, and he and several other Rotarians recently went to Rotary International headquarters in Chicago, and while he was there, he picked up a banner that he asked that I present to our club, and I would ask President Al to please accept this live from Chicago banner from Rotary International. President Al.
Thank you, John. Okay, we have a new member induction, and past President Michael Kahn is going to lead that process. Michael.
Thank you, Al. Will the following three inductees please come up to the dais with your sponsor and turn facing the club? Scott Davis, J.J. Hammond, Brad Wright. Scott is sponsored by Jimmy Derrick, J.J. by Hal Stevenson, and Brad by Adam Jordan. I'll be telling the club about each new member and then sharing some thoughts with the inductees, and finally inviting the sponsors to affix the Rotary pin on new members. As they're lining up here, I want to remind you as a club that these new members breathe new life into our club. They provide fresh ideas and experience. They provide an avenue for Columbia Rotary to best represent the diverse nature of servant leaders in the Midlands. So I encourage you out there in your seat to look in your circle of friends and acquaintances who out there is a Rotarian in need of your sponsorship. So as I call you your name, would you step forward as a new member so that the club might recognize you? Scott Davis. Scott is professionally related to his sponsor, Jimmy Derrick, through their real estate work. A commercial real estate advisor with the Coldwell Banker office in Gervais Street, Scott has served his profession in a wide variety of ways. On the Central Carolina Realtors Association and a number of committees, as well as their board of directors, and also at the state level on the Professional Standards Committee and its board as well. Scott is a member of the Building Industry Association Commercial Council, Executives Association of Greater Columbia, and the Committee of 100. Now, Scott has the unusual distinction of previous service as a Sertoman, having not once but twice served as the Irmo Club's president. With personal interests in golf and travel, Scott notes unashamedly in his bio that he has teamed with the likes of his sponsor, Jimmy Derrick, in auctioneering, raising, quote, millions of dollars for charitable events. Scott, we welcome you to the club, and we're so glad that you're going to be turning your talents now to helping this club raise billions of dollars. Next, I'd like to introduce you to James Jeffrey Hammond, who goes by JJ. He's sponsored by Hal Stevenson. And like Scott, J.J. Hammond is a real estate broker and the president of Family Properties of South Carolina Realty. His office is located on Percival Road. Scott lives in the same area as his work, actually on the Woodlands Golf Course, and is married to Megan, who are raising their 3 children, Claire, Charlotte, and Tripp, ages 9 to 2. You might suspect that that family and golf are some of JJ's interests, but so are football and softball are sports, as well as travel, property renovation, real estate investment, and 2 that fit especially well with Rotary, networking and community service. In addition, Scott notes an interest in Bible history. So, I said Scott, I mean JJ. JJ, Hal Stevenson is going to give you a little Bible quiz after this meeting to see if you're eligible for Rotary.
Already did that.
Just kidding, of course. As Rotary thrives on its neutrality in religious and political matters, we find that doesn't work to get tests of that nature. Now, we do note that though you have religious involvement at Northeast Pres, where you're active in the men's Bible study, we also see that you're involved in secular activities, such as being treasurer of the board of Palmetto Place Children's Shelter, and that you've presided over your Cambridge Oaks Homeowners Association. That you hold professional membership in the Sales and Marketing Council and Columbia Home Builders Association. I also note that you have degrees from Midlands Tech, Newberry, and USC. And y'all get this, a personal interest in skydiving. Give it up for J.J. Hammond. And now meets Bradley S. Wright. Brad, as his friends know him, one of whom is Adam Jordan, who sponsors Brad. And Brad is husband to Tracy, whom you've met earlier, and father to twins, a boy, Jackson, and a girl, Sullivan. I don't know their ages, but I suspect they're the same. Brad's real claim to fame, of course, is that he is Glenn Ward's cousin. But we decided we'd give him a try at being a good member of this club anyway. The Wrights live near Fort Jackson and Kings Grant, and Brad works in the Main Street office of the McNair law firm. Get this, as special counsel. I've never quite known what special counsel is. You may have thought of yourself as a special teacher, special engineer, or special author. Brad, however, has it right here in his title, special counsel. So Brad, if you are really good as a new member, we might designate you as special Rotarian. Born in Ashboro, and Brad, I believe they have a very nice zoo up there like we do in Columbia. And he's, interestingly enough, a Tiger by education. That is an Auburn Tiger, I'm sorry to say. But Brad received his law degree at Carolina. As a member of Eastminster Presbyterian, Brad, in his spare time, likes to hunt and fish. Please welcome Brad. That's okay, if y'all would look this way for a second. I want to welcome you to Rotary International and to the Columbia Rotary Club. You're joining a global force of some 1.2 million Rotarians that are engaged in peace, understanding, and health, and projects as broad and large as eliminating polio from the world, not polio, and as intimate and hands-on as alleviating hunger right here in the Midlands. Many of the Midlands key leaders are part of this club, and your particular leadership and gifts have been recognized, and that's why you're here. I challenge you to be actively involved in the committee and to share your ideas and gifts with Rotary. On your road to this moment, you've learned some key facts about Rotary from your sponsors, from a past club president, and from your weekly visits here. Once your dues are paid, and I assume an invoice may be en route to you already, and once you attend a fireside chat, you are an official member of one of the greatest organizations in which you'll ever be associated. Welcome to Rotary.
Yeah, I see Michael's bucking for Lester's job. You know, these new guys, Lester Bates was quite humorous when he was up there doing that job. He did mention something that I've noticed in South Carolina, as you all know, we talked about the flood and how much people have shown love for each other, and we had Manual 9, a lot of grace going out all over South Carolina this year. And I just want to mention this because there's particularly a lot of grace being shown by Clemson fans in South Carolina. And I just want them to know that I really appreciate it, but I want to acknowledge that they're number 3 in the country this week, and that's a little bit of grace. I don't think I mentioned I went to Wofford Homecoming. Okay, so we're going to have a history moment from Roger's group. Roger.
Thanks, Alan. Terrence laid the groundwork for what I'm going to talk about, which is service projects that the club has had over the years. As you know, we were formed in 1916, and since that time, in 98 years, we've undertaken many service projects. I'm only going to be able to mention a few of them as we go along. The first one I was able to identify was in 1917. The first year the club was in existence, they raised over $4,000, the equivalent of about $60,000 today, for the Associated Charities Fund Drive, which was a forerunner of the Community Chest in the United Way. The club worked with the Civic League in 1917 as well to try and help convince people to turn their plots in the city into garden plots for the war effort. And many of the names I found on the list in that newspaper article were members of the Columbia Rotary Club. Also during the Christmas season in 1917, the club voted to take up a collection for the Doors of Hope, a home for unwed mothers. At the same meeting that they took up that collection, they passed a resolution that said that they would no longer take up collections for anything. Unfortunately, we have violated that thousands of times over this time. In 1921, the club began the long tradition of supporting the Boy Scouts by pledging $6,000 per year for 3 years to help what became actually Camp Barstow. Again, with the Boy Scouts in 1922, we sponsored a luncheon and a dinner for young men who were going to ride their bicycles to Washington, D.C. This is the photograph of them on the front, and this is the menu, and I'm not positive, but I'm almost certain that was held at the Jefferson Hotel, which is where the club was meeting at that time. Beginning in 1925, the club was active in raising money for the Community Chest, a program sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, and today it's known as the United Way of the Midlands. Over the years, our club has been a staunch supporter of the United Way, and many of the volunteers and campaign chairs have been members of the club. During the 1920s and 30s, the club took underprivileged children and orphans to the state fair and the circus, paying for their admission, for rides, and for food. In 1930, as the Depression was settling in on the country, the club took over 500 children to the fair. In 1928, the club initiated its scholarship program, our current Columbia Scholars Program. During the early 1950s, the club sponsored a Little League team. It was in the Rosewood Little League, and one of the coaches at that time was Mooney Plater. Many of you may remember Mooney Plater. In 1952, the club collected a pickup truck full of magazines for the Girls Industrial School, the forerunner of the women's prison. And in 1955, the club managed to collect 550 pairs of shoes for the Carolina Children's Home. Today, the club continues an active supporter of the Salvation Army, the United Way, the Red Cross, the CART Fund, and Harvest Hope Food Bank, as well as many others. But perhaps the most unusual meeting was held on November 12, 1951, when the program consisted of a member of the club demonstrating how easy and painless it was to give blood.
Thank you, Roger. And Carrie Powers will introduce our program. Carrie.
Good afternoon. Before I get into my introduction, I did want to mention that this morning I got an email from the president of the Rotary Club of New Orleans, and they have challenged the members of that club to raise $2,500 among the members of the club, and then the board has stated that they would match up to $2,500 for our flood relief fund. $5,000 donation coming from the New Orleans Rotary Club, and I think that's pretty exciting. The note was very nice. Obviously, they know what a lot of our flood victims have gone through here, so they're really feeling for us here. But let's get to our speaker. I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today. John Farley is a self-proclaimed weather nut. He's very happy to be the chief meteorologist for ABC Columbia, WOLO. enjoys the challenges of forecasting the ever-changing weather in the Midlands. Before joining ABC Columbia, we saw him as the chief meteorologist for WIS television, and prior to that, he was at KNTV, the NBC affiliate in San Francisco. John is an Emmy-winning, award-winning meteorologist and a certified broadcast meteorologist with the American Meteorological Society. He holds a Master of Science degree in meteorology from San Jose State University in San Jose, California. He received the honor of Graduate of the Last Decade from the College of Science in 2001. While in graduate school, John worked with a team to create mathematical models that forecast the fog at San Francisco International Airport. His team was given the Excellence in Aviation Award from the FAA in 2002. John is happy to report that the FAA still uses these models today. While in California, John also worked as a consultant for a power company that provides gas and electricity to roughly 16 million people. His responsibilities include temperature, wind, snow, and severe weather forecasting, as well as providing long-term electricity generation forecasts for the proposed wind farms. John loves to talk about the weather. We all know that. We see him on the air every night, and he's visited with thousands of students over the past 20 years. He lives here in Lexington with his 3 children and his wife. And I don't know about you guys, but I was glued to him for the entire time that we were watching the flooding in the Midlands. And you looked exhausted by the 3rd or 4th day, but you handled it like a pro. So, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you very much. That was very nice introduction. I appreciate all of that. But I also want to start off by saying I really have a warm spot in my heart for Rotary. When I was 19, I told my parents that I was going to take some time off from college. Scariest thing you'll ever tell your parents. But I spent a year in Up With People. Some of you may know what that organization is. But it was the Rotary Club in my town who stepped forward because it was an expensive endeavor to contribute significantly to me being able to do that and represent my town for that year. So this goes way back to when I was 19, which is a long time ago now. So, we have just endured the most significant weather event of our generation and perhaps many generations here in the Midlands. For us, clearly, it was worse than Hugo. The death toll, unfortunately, is now at 19. And all of the fatalities occurred in cars. It's a miracle. When you see some of these pictures, it's a miracle that they weren't more. It was just an awful, awful storm. So we'll take you through some of this and show you this. I have the labels on top here. This is Old Neck Road, and that is representative of what was going on that morning. That really, the rain started in part on Friday, but it really got going Saturday night into Sunday morning, and it just didn't stop. So we'll go through this. This is a video. This is also Old Neck Road, and this is what many homeowners, you know, people, middle of the night, they come downstairs, they hear some noise, and this is what they woke up to.
John, that, just not to interrupt you, but that car, many of you might know Chuck Sally, realtor in town, that was his car.
Yeah. Well, oh wait, let me see if I can get this to play. Hang on there. Can we get this video to play? Because that's the video. Maybe you hit the space bar, try that. No. Well, this video, okay. The next video is, this is the same, this is also Chuck Sally. This is on the roof of their house, looking down as the floodwaters were coming through. Yeah, so it started in the house, and then many people got their way to the second floor. And on Lake Catherine, thank God that people had boats. There was an armada of boats, of people going back and forth rescuing people from homes, where, you know, had that not been the case, this would have been much, much worse. So let's give you a few other. Let's get this one. All right. Well, there are a couple of before and afters on this one. Look at this. This is Glen Haven Drive. Crazy. Let me give you a few others here. This is Divine Street, of course. Look at how high the water is. I mean, it's, you know, in some cases, what, 6, 8 feet? This is Forest Drive. This one here is Kaufman Road. Look at that. Just the power, the sheer power of the water. It's crazy. This is Kilbourne Road. Again, look at this. See where the street sign, it goes all the way up. I'll give you a few more here. This one moves back and forth quickly, but you see what happened. There's Carey's Lake Dam in Columbia. That is the Riverwalk, Columbia. This is, for those of you who are familiar with this is Old Mill Dam in Lexington, and if you notice, is the pointer on top, is that what that is? Okay, so if we go to, let me see if I can get that. And on the left side, you notice where the dam, it was an earthen dam and it just broke. It's just too much water. And that all ran out to here, down the road. And this is one of those situations where the road is partially washed out, but as you drive up to it, you have no idea. And that's the whole thing that we always talk about. You know, the National Weather Service has a big Turn Around, Don't Drown campaign. And that's exactly what this is. You drive up to something like this, you have no idea where the bottom of that road is. And yet, you know, people think, well, you know, I've been over this road before, I go up this on my way home, I've been through this 100 times. And that's when things get messy. Here's Wise Ferry in Lexington. Again, you see there's a culvert under the road, but it couldn't handle the amount of water that came through. And it of course, washed out a good part of the road here. This is Bar Lake. This is pretty close to where I live in Lexington. There was a dam there, and that dam got washed out. It was an earthen dam, but still, gone. And downstream, there are all kinds of trees that are down as a result of this as well. Botanical Parkway, look at this. Yeah, and I don't know what the number is, but I mean, the folks who've been working on the roads have done a tremendous job to get them back, which has really been incredible. Here, of course, this is Lake Murray Dam. This is taken by a drone. And what you notice here is that the spillways, 3 of the 6 spillways are open. The last time that SCE&G had to open the spillways for weather reasons was 1969. It's been a long time since they had to open for weather reasons. Now, what they did was, a couple of days before, they started, as you know, the dam creates hydroelectric power, and they can run water through that hydroelectric facility to create power, but it also releases water from the dam. So before the rain came, they were doing that for a couple of days, and then after the rain came, they had to open up a couple of spillways to let this go. Now, there was a lot of discussion during the time where people there were rumors going around, especially on social media, about, well, this dam is going to be compromised and so on and so on. That never happened, and it never got close. Their job is to keep it to 360 feet, and they did. It goes above 360 feet, you have to go way above 360 feet to get, to run into problems, and there was never a problem here. Now, that said, when you open 3 spillways, that's the Saluda River now. It's the Category 4 rapids or something. I mean, there was a lot of water that went downstream, and there were issues downstream for sure. But there was never any problem with the integrity of the Lake Murray Dam. And by the way, they opened 3 spillways. They could have opened 3 more. So there was still additional capacity that they could have done, work with that. I want to show you something here. This is, I copied this. This is the last thing that I did on the internet, frankly, before all heck broke loose that morning. So this was around 3 in the morning, and what we pay attention to, these are river gauges, and there are river gauges all over the place. And so we look at those as the water's coming in. You say, okay, you look at rain gauges and river gauges, and you can see things happening. This, of course, is Rocky Branch Creek. That's 5 points where, or just downstream of 5 points, where things flood often. And this was just before it flooded. It went to major flood stage. It went up to, I believe it was just a little bit higher than that, maybe another foot into major flood stage. And so at that point, I told the people that I was working with, I said, you should go be safe, but go get a crew down there. And there were people walking this deep in water. They were coming out of the bars that night, and unfortunately. So they walked into this thing. And again, luckily, they made it through. But it was scary as all get out. I can tell you, I'm watching the video and I'm going, it was very scary. But we look at these gauges all over the place. Now, I want to give you a little observation about, Gills Creek was where things were really, really bad. Now, follow this. The gauge, the river gauge at Gills Creek shut off, broke at 10 feet above floods, 10 feet above its all-time record flooding. So we don't know how high it got. I mean, it's just crazy. 10 feet above the thing, and then it broke. I mean, it's, we really don't know. That was just, so we'll talk about how rare an event this really is. There are the rainfall estimates. Now, these are radar estimates. Now, just to talk about how radars work, if you go by the Columbia Airport, you see what looks like a big golf ball on a tee? That's the radar. And so what the radar does is the radar sends a beam out at the speed of light, and it bounces off what it sees, and through some pretty elaborate algorithms, it estimates what's in the cloud and what's coming out of the clouds in terms of the size of the droplets and the intensity and so on. And then it gives you an estimate of how much rain has fallen. So it gets you in range, but remember a couple things about radar. Remember, these things are Earth-based. They're on the surface. They're not like satellites. So the farther out you get, the Earth curves underneath you. So you go higher and higher and higher, and then they lose how effective they are very far away from the radar or very close to the radar. Very close to the radar, they can't see up and down too far. Very far, they see too high. So anyway, this is an estimate here using all the radars that we have available to us of what the rainfall was. And what I really want to point out is, see those whites? Those are areas of 20 inches of rain in a 2-day period. Now, just to put that in perspective, if this were snow, would have been 18 feet of snow in 2 days. 18 feet. Just think about that, okay? In the Rockies, they get 18 feet of snow once in a while. In the Sierra Nevada, California, they get 18 feet of snow. There's nowhere near sea level where you get 18 feet of snow. It doesn't happen. So just to put that into some sort of perspective of how unusual an event this was. These are the numbers that have come out of the Weather Service, and I just wanted to show you. Gills Creek is on top, 21.5 inches of rain in 2 days, roughly. This may be a little bit longer than 2 days. They're still trying to figure out the specifics, but that gauge, 21.5 inches of rain, and that's why there were so many problems over there. And then as you go down the list, you can see, you can pick out really where things were bad. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're talking to the sheriff of Clarendon County, and his description was, my county is now 3 islands. It was crazy, just awful. And we go down this list, and you continue to go down. These are astronomical, eye-popping numbers. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, but I remember Gills Creek was on top. But you can, whatever you can read, that can get. So. Then there's some other numbers here, and you go all the way down to about 8 inches, and that's a low one. Lake Murray Dam, as I recall, was right around 10.5. Is it? Can we see that one?
11.6.
Yeah, 11. Yeah.
11.6.
Yeah. So I mean, even with 11 inches of rain, which is 10 inches less than the max, there were still all kinds of problems just because it all came at once primarily. So you've been hearing this term, 1,000-year flood. What does that mean? Does that mean that this will only happen once every 1,000 years? No. What it means is this, is the probability of this happening is 1 in 1,000 every year.
That's right.
Right? So it's not, it's a very unusual event, but think of it this way. If you're a math guy or gal, you'll appreciate this. Take a coin, and assuming that it's, it's not unevenly weighted. If you flip the coin, if you got 10 times in a row, heads, 2 to the 10th roughly, then that's the rarity of this. Try it. It's very hard to get 10 in a row that are heads or 10 in a row that are tails. It doesn't happen very often. So this is a 1 in 1,000 occurrence. It's a 1 in 1,000 probability. And you say, well, how the heck do they know that? Well, climatology folks spend all the time combing over the data of how much rain we've gotten at any given location in the United States, for that matter the world, but we have pretty good coverage in the United States over long periods of time. And then you say, okay, you can do some math and figure out what is the probability of this. So that's what this is. And what I want to show you here is, without getting into all of the meteorology, now I hope this one plays. If it doesn't, let's see if that one, will that one play? No. Well, okay, what I want to show you is down in the bottom in the middle, you see that big bullseye there, that big blob? That, yes, that is the hurricane that was out there. And what was happening was, we did not get any direct impact from that hurricane, but what we did get was a tap of moisture off of it. There was at about 5,000 feet up, we were tapping into the moisture. And remember, the water temperature out there is about the mid-80s. So there's a lot of juice. There's a lot of evaporation off the ocean. You get a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, and it's all headed our way. So there was a ribbon. As that storm progressed off to the east-northeast, to the right of your screen, it headed out toward Bermuda. There was also a low that was coming in from the west for us, and it parked. And so those are the two main features. There are other things, but those are the two main features that caused all of this. And, you know, it was one of those deals where if you were in Rock Hill, you didn't get very much rain. If you're in Augusta, you didn't get very much rain. It was all right here in the middle, a very narrow ribbon. And the idea, think about this, is that when you look at a storm, you know, you look at a moisture tap that's 500 miles away, the idea that it would focus exactly on basically, you know, a 50 or 70 mile width, it's very unusual. So, this was an awful, awful flood. And, you know, I have spent some time in schools recently because, you know, some parents have said my kids are just, you know, from what they've seen and what they've experienced, they're traumatized. So, you know, and I was trying to go talk to the kids, and when you talk to the younger kids, you know, they're good with it. You know, it's like, don't worry about it. You know, it's okay. You're going to be okay. And then, of course, one 6th grader goes, can you guarantee this isn't going to happen? No, guarantee's a strong word. You know, and whether you never say never and you never say always, believe me, okay, I've been around. But the probability of this happening is pretty doggone low. And I know there are a lot of, at this point, there are going to be some pending lawsuits and such on, you know, where the dam's strong enough and so on. I have a buddy who does this. He's a forensic meteorologist. And what that means is he goes back and he recreates these events, fires, floods, you know, somebody slipping on ice, name it. And he goes all around the country and he does this. And so I talked to him about it. I said, you know, what are your thoughts on this one? And he said, if you wanted to protect against this one, you would have had to have built 3-foot-high curbs around the whole city. You know, it was just such an act of God that it was so over the top that yes, there may be some compensation for certain things, but he said the most well-constructed of anything, you design them for the 100-year flood or the, you know, whatever the number is. But he said this, it's just crazy. I mean, think about it. That much water in 2 days. And you know, again, when you think about that much water, it's not just that much water, it's that much water that then flows downhill. And then, you know, you can get 5 points floods frequently with 2 inches or 3 inches of water in a short enough amount of time. Well, think about almost 2 feet of water. It's crazy. So I figured that I'll cut it off here because I figured there'd probably be a few questions related to it, and I don't know how much time we have either.
Good, we've got about 10 minutes.
Okay, all right. So any questions related to it? I figured some people may. Yes, sir.
You used a European model or an American model?
Okay, so here's the thing. Which one got this one right? Okay, the point is this, is that in weather, we have a lot of models from which to choose, and my job is to know essentially enough of the math that's in the models and enough of how they work so that I can decide which model to use that I think is going to give us the best result. So, in this case, 3 days before, it was Wednesday night, there were hints of this on Tuesday night, but you know, really more inklings of it on Wednesday night. And really all of the models performed pretty well. But to your point, the European model nailed where that where that hurricane was going to go, and the American model didn't. And I will just tell you, it's an interesting thing that happens. All the European countries have put together a consortium because they figure we'll pool all of our money instead of England and France and Germany all having their own stuff. So they have a terrific model, and they continue to upgrade it. And the other thing too is they incentivize their people to beat the American model. I'm not kidding. That's the truth. And so historically, and still to this day, the European model is better than the American model in the 5 to 6 day range. And we have several American models, but our main competitor, the European model, is just very good. And they do things, they have a lot of computing power, they continue to add resources, and like anything in technology, it's like rolling the stone up a hill. They continue to slowly roll the stone, as do we. But in this case, their model is still better, yeah. Yes, sir.
John, maybe you can confirm this. I've heard that all the dams that failed were the ones that were designed by non-professionals. And the ones that didn't fail were designed by engineers or Corps of Engineers, and they didn't fail. Is that a true statement?
I don't know anything about the design of the dams. I don't know anything. Sir.
I can answer that. No. I was involved with the dam that the Corps and Soil Conservation designed the dam and it failed.
Right.
2 dams above it failed prior to smacking into this day.
Yes.
Were you able to predict, obviously not to this magnitude, but could you, we had flood warnings and watches and everything, but could you all even predict the magnitude of this?
Repeat the question.
The question is, could we predict the magnitude of this? Going into this, every indication was that it was going to be bad. And whenever you look at a weather event, and I know this is going to surprise some of you, but there's a range, right? In other words, there's a low end and a high end and somewhere, and as long as you get in the middle of something. I mean, the truth is, people think we know more than we know. I mean, some people say, well, look, it's 10 o'clock at my house on Main Street. Why isn't it what you said? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we can't be that accurate, okay? But on a storm like this, 3 days out, we were getting inklings that it was going to be bad. The question is how bad. The low end of the range was 6 inches. The high end of the range was like 18, in some cases 20. Well, it verified on the higher end of the range. So I was hitting it pretty hard on Thursday and especially Friday. I mean, as a weather person, you spend most of your time, and it's, here's the happy weather guy, la-di-la-di, right? But weather can kill you sometimes. And so that's when you have to kind of say, okay, I have to take this one seriously, and I have to, and then there's a whole other thing involved in weather forecasting too, which is, when you see it, and you see the potential of it, are you ready to pull the trigger? And you're ready to cry wolf, you're ready to say something knowing that there's a chance that you'll be crying wolf, but there's a greater chance that you could be saving somebody's life. So I would equate this storm with one other storm when I was in California. Where I lived, there were a lot of hills. And those hills were saturated. And it was a situation where, at the time, I got a pit in my stomach that night, and I had a pit in my stomach this Friday and Saturday night of this storm, this is bad. And out there, when you have saturated hills and you throw on another 3 or 4 inches of rain, yeah, and so it mudslides. So in that case, I was saying to people, I couldn't tell people individually what to do, but I did suggest, if you live next to a hill, you might think about a hotel tonight. You can go back tomorrow. No harm. There were a lot of people, especially on Friday night, Judy and I were talking, and we were saying, if you're in a low-lying area, and I can't tell you specifically, because people are saying, well, I live at this elevation, so if you live at 500 feet elevation, that's great, unless all your neighbors are at 600 feet elevation, right? So it all depends. I couldn't tell you. So I put a topographical map on my Facebook page to try to help people decide what to do, but we knew it was going to be bad. We didn't know how bad. We really didn't know. Sir?
John, and yet after this, we awake last Wednesday or Thursday and hear that the most dangerous hurricane that's ever hit the planet is out there coming out of the Pacific toward Mexico. And then, of course, thank God it came back down to a tropical storm. But my first question is, is there something different out there that's causing what we're seeing?
I think you're probably going toward the global warming question. Is that probably, yeah, or climate change? This is what I would say. This is what I would say about that. Think of it's. I don't know how much time we have, but this one's going to take longer than a minute. Okay. When we look at a changing climate, or when we look at things, the thing to think about is this. I'm a person who believes that we are best served when we listen to our experts in whatever field it is. Amen. So, for example, think about the cars that we drive now. There are some cars that are new that have had 0 fatalities, though they've been driven by the population for a whole year. 30 years ago, that wasn't happening. But that's all due to advances in science and airbags and detection and all these things. Okay. Think about last December. The European Space Agency had a probe that they had launched 10 years prior. This thing traveled 4 billion miles. It caught up to a comet that was traveling 50 times the speed of a bullet. They came alongside of it, they deploy a probe, the probe goes down onto the comet, it starts measuring stuff, it sends back to us what's on that comet. This is real science. Think about the medical advances. I have a buddy who had cancer a couple years ago. His doctor told him that was a death sentence 20 years ago, now you're 95% cured, right? So the point is that science advances. And when we talk about climate change, the question is, what are the climate scientists saying about climate change? Now, it's really important that I want to differentiate between me and a climate scientist. Asking me about climate change is analogous to asking a nurse about brain surgery. Okay, I'm an operational forecaster. I have a master's degree. I know more than the average bear, but I don't know about brain surgery. All right? In the same way, I'm not an expert on climate science, but I can tell you what the climate scientists are saying. And what they're saying is that global warming is happening and humans are the cause, period. And it's not a debatable, is it happening, is it not? Now, can you unequivocally assign this event or that event to global warming? No. It'd be like this. Think about baseball. Barry Bonds, for those of you who follow baseball, he was a guy who was hitting about 35 home runs a year. And then he starts hitting 60 and 70, okay? So, something happened, okay? Statistically significant change in his performance, okay? And I happened to be out there at the time, and I saw him from one year to the next. I mean, the dude was like ginormous, it was, okay. There's this thing called steroids, right? So, but the thing is, okay, when he hit those 70 home runs, could you say that 51st home run was a steroid home run? Well, except for the fact that it went 50 feet farther, but except for that. No, but the point is that you couldn't pick out a steroid home run versus a non-steroid home run. In the same way, you can't really pick out one storm and say that this one is a climate change storm and this one isn't. You just stack the deck, right? So is the climate changing? Yes, it's getting warmer, and those are simple measurements. And the simple measurements are, the reason why it's getting warmer is because as we, as a society, continue to burn fossil fuel, we are adding more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. And carbon dioxide traps heat, and it's not allowed to escape out into space. So the measurements of carbon dioxide are up by 40% over the natural cycle of where they would be by what we've done. Now again, we made the combustion engine. We've done a lot of good things. We have electricity. We have a lot of things that are really of benefit because of that. But there is another side to that we as a society should deal with. And yes, there are studies and studies and studies, but the short answer, and as short as I could do, and I apologize, I know you guys want to get back to work, but the short answer is it will make things worse. The California drought is worse because we're in a warmer climate. Those sort of things. So, yes, go ahead.
Last question.
John, a couple of days before the rain started, we had a police officer who was unfortunately killed, and it seemed like right after that happened is when we started getting this rain coming in and saturating the soil. Just prior to that, I remember I was on my boat, and I just bought a brand new fish finder, so my depth gauge was brand spanking new. And we were at 2.5 feet where I parked my boat at Lake Catherine. At the peak of the flood, we were at 14, almost 15 feet.
Wow. Did you all hear that?
Yeah.
2.5 feet to 15 feet from that storm.
12.5 feet.
Yeah. Crazy.
Now, may I make one quick comment?
Quick.
Elliot mentioned the policeman dying, was shot on Thursday. Saturday morning, John's neighbor across the street called him to say, you might want to move Ainsley's car. John took the call on his cell phone in North Carolina. He said, my mother-in-law's across the street keeping our two boys. This neighbor had two patrolmen who were in town for that funeral, who then, when they went outside to go across the street to get Kathy Robinson and John and Oliver, the two patrolmen fanned out on Wood Lake, getting people out before it was too late. It was just what God did through other humans in this town was amazing.
Membership drives.
Thank you. All right, okay.
Maybe some of you want to go back and see Bob Inglis's presentation now that we've heard that, perhaps. President-elect John Backus, next week's program.
Quit watching Fox.
All right, next week, we have Brian Sterling. Brian is the former chief of staff for Governor Nikki Haley, and he is now director of the South Carolina Department of Corrections. You may remember a couple of years ago, we had some awful depressing stories about what was going on in the Department of Corrections. And he's going to tell us some of the real positive things that have happened in the last few years in the Department of Corrections. So I think it'll be real interesting. The following week, we have District Governor Rod Thunderbird, and that will be enlightening, I'm sure. But to encourage you to come that week, we also going to have a very special announcement, which I think you'll be pleased to hear. So 2 weeks from now, special announcement from District Governor. Thank John. I'll thank John. John, thank you.
Okay, sure. Happy to be here.
Thank you, John. We appreciate it. All right, Jim, close us with